After unboxing the camera and getting a chance to become familiar with it, there are two things that I would like to change. The first I alluded to was this big silver battery grip screw that's right on the side here. It really stands out. If you can see, it really also protrudes pretty far from the edge of the camera. The other thing is the front of the camera has like a nice leatherette, or I'm not, it might be synthetic material covering, slightly padded. On the back, it's more of a diamond grip. However, however, the ridges around the side are much higher than you would expect. And my general feeling is possibly the company had planned to apply a body covering here, but just didn't, because this looks like the type of texturing that would be used when you're going to apply some contact cement or some other type of adhesive, and then apply a body covering. So let's address this first. What I had mentioned before, I think what would work well, of course, there are some downsides to this, right? So we'll discuss that. What I thought would work better, because this actually is sort of beveled out. So what would work better is if you had a screw that would sit flush with the surface. So I have some screws. I painted the head black, and I found one that fit among my many screws. This one's a bit longer, so there's a chance that I might actually, at some point, shave it down. So now, as you can see, there's nothing that protrudes from the edge of the camera. I think it really gives it just a sleeker look to it. It's something very tiny. It's probably something that I'm worrying about needlessly, but in any case, I went ahead and replaced that screw and painted it black, and now I think it fits much better with the overall design. As far as this goes, I happen to have some leather material with a backing on it. So what we're going to do, and it's not a real thick material, so I think it would fit in here very nicely. But what it does require is for me to cut some precise lengths, and they're rounded in the corners, so that's always a bit trickier. So I'm going to cut some material. We'll drop it in there, and we'll see how well it looks. Of course, the first part is going to be actually measuring to see how much I need. So it looks like you always want to have a bit over, and then you trim it down to size. So it looks like I'll need about this much, which is, looks like it's roughly, what is that, 8 centimeters. So I'm going to go over to my paper cutter, and I'm going to trim off a piece, and I'll be right back. Okay, so the reason I use the paper cutter is to get as straight an edge as possible, because that'll be important, because you don't want to see any weird uneven cuts here and there. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to measure to see what we need. So the actual length of this is not 8 millimeters, but it's really, or 8 centimeters. Sometimes measuring inside diameters or circumferences, or diameters, not circumference, but diameter, or inside measurements can be a little bit difficult. So in that case, a micrometer can come in handy. So let's try this. So that is 46 millimeters. Almost it's really 46.5 millimeters. I'm going to do this off camera. I'm going to get a cut down, and we'll be right back. If you notice, the grain isn't too far off from the grain that's used here. It's a bit slightly coarser, and I think this is a slightly thicker material, but this is going to be pretty darn close as far as matching it. There's always a question, do you want to use like a colored material? In this case, I think I just want to go with plain black. Keep it very basic. So now the question is, what's the length of each of these pieces here? And so what we're going to do is we're just going to measure and then wrap this. Looks to be 3 0.1 centimeters. 3.1 for that one. And for this one, it's going to be, looks like 4.25. So 3 1.5 and 4 2.5. So we'll do this one first. This actually fits. Yeah, see, that looks pretty good. And then 4 2.5. So you can always slide this over here. 4 2.5. So then what you do is you take your material, you butt it up against the guide, and slice. Now, if you notice, one of the challenges is on these corners, they're round. Here it's squared off, the corners. On the inside edges, it's slightly rounded. So that always becomes more of a challenge. So where are my two pieces? So they go on this way. So that means on these corners, you have to take off the edge, the corners just ever so slightly. And the easiest way is to start them with a small little angle by doing it at an angle, a series of little angular cuts. You will never be able to, well, I shouldn't say never, but it's very unlikely that you would be able to make the correct cut by doing it freehand. There we are. That looks good. And same with this side. We'll just cut off the corner just slightly. Then we will nip it just a little bit to get the rounded portion. Okay, very good. Next, we'll just attach this. Let's make sure it's, I see a little piece of dust in here, piece of dust in there. One of the ways to ensure that you have a good fit, I've read, is that you can always squirt this, the surface, one of the surfaces, with either some water or some rubbing alcohol, which will evaporate. But in this case, we're just going to slip this on here. We're not going to press it hard until we're sure that we have a good fit. Now, if you notice, just by dry fitting it, you can see that this is actually a bit longer than what we want. There. It just easy does it. Now, this is slightly longer. However, we can drop it into the edge right there. Fingernail. I also have this tool that I have had for many years, and it's simply, you can see that it is slightly long on this one side. So let's lift it up, and we will see if we can just trim this. Once again, freehand trimming is really, really quite difficult. Just because it's always, it's very simple to end up with an edge that bows in. You have to have a super steady hand. See, that needs to be trimmed just a bit more. And obviously your shears have to be extremely sharp, whatever cutting tool you're using. See that? So you can see how this is still a bit long on this side. Let's see. There we go. How about down here? Yeah, I think it's still slightly too long in the middle. So there is a, bit of trial and error here. And because of the type of material it is, it does have some elasticity to it. So you could get away with just trimming it just slightly short. And then stretching it a bit as you reach the edge of the camera. So let's try it on this edge. Drop it down. Oh, start in the corner. Down along this edge. See, it's ever so slightly long on the one side. That means I can. I'm going to see if I can slice this with the paper cutter. Okay, I did that off camera. Let's try again. Ah, yes, there we are. See, nice fit. Now we can take it, and a good way to do this is get a rag and use that to help press it down. Piece of cake, right? Not exactly, but almost. Let's dry fit this piece, see if we're going to run into the same problem. Hard to say. You know what? I think this is slightly long on this side. All right, let's see how it goes. I can tell it's a little bit long on this edge, and it's going to be okay on this side. So right up near the top, I'm going to give this a little slice. Here. That went in much better. I'll use this tool just to get in the corners here, along the edges. So here we are now with the recovered camera, at least on the back, or actually not recovered, but covered camera. And you can see how this material is pretty close to what's on the front. I like it a bit better. I thought the diamond grip pattern was fine, but I really like it better with a real covering on the back. And hopefully you agree with me too. As I mentioned, I kept it the basic black. If I did want to use like a colored body covering, then obviously I probably have to pull this and to match it. To match it, I have some green, I have some gray, I have some burgundy color. So you know, I did have choices, but I really chose to keep it original and keep it looking fairly simple. One thing I'm thinking of doing is getting a little focusing tab. Generally, I don't like the focusing tabs, but I think with this lens, because of the width of this ring here, the focusing ring, it's so narrow that it is a bit difficult to just grab and focus. So I think if I were to put one tab on each side, little ears, so to speak, it would make it much easier when you're focusing the lens to be able to grab something. Although this does have serrations here. So there's little ball bearings that are in this ring, probably right here. Anyway, it's sort of tightly sprung, so each of these little detents or settings is slightly stiff. I don't know if that will loosen over time. Maybe will, maybe won't, but it might be nice to have a couple tabs right here. As I said, generally I'm not a big fan of tab focusing, but in this case, because you're not actually rangefinder focusing, you're scale focusing, I think it might work pretty well. Just a real short video on a couple modifications I made. I add a body covering here on the back, and also to replace this screw with something a bit more discreet. And you'll notice now that the screw is flush with the surface. Of course, that means when I want to change battery, instead of just using a quarter, a nickel, or whatever, a coin, I'll have to use a Phillips head screwdriver. But that's a small price to pay, if you ask me. And, you know, if you care to, please hit that like and subscribe button. I'll have more about this camera in the future. Feel free to make a comment in the area below or send me an email, contact@camera-talk.net. And see you on the next video.